Calling all citizens from all over the world. How do you stop a tank when it comes into your neighborhood? I know how to do it. Russians don't like me. I have a lot of experience with armor. I've been all over the world looking at different armor. Armor that's been hit. Armor that's taken strikes from things like RPGs. Tow missiles. Landmines, as in this case. Tanks are very vulnerable. If you got one of these rolling through your neighborhood, Russian T-series going 15 to 20 miles an hour, you can run up alongside it and you can throw debris in here. You can slow it down. You can throw a jack stand in there. You can throw pieces of metal, large pieces of metal. These mechanisms are fragile. People think tanks are all robust and everything. If you know what you're doing and you throw enough garbage in here, you can slow those big slugs right down. Slow them down so you can hit them with one of these. Even something that small. And I'm not talking heavy anti-armor weapons. I'm talking what those people are going to have over there. They're going to have a lot of these. Now they have new munitions for these. I've shot hundreds of RPG rounds. They have new munitions now. But they have a tandem charge one that can get through the back of these main battle tanks, through those engine louvers. Is a good target. And it might take 2 hits, but you can knock the motor out that way. Let's say this is the back of a T-80. These louvers. If you got a dual charge, you got a good chance of knocking that motor out. Might take 2 hits. Up here, you got a gap. You got a confined space between the turret and the hull. This is the rear of the tank. They could have sandbags and different things stacked up here or grid. But if you can get that RPG, the single stage shape round, pretty good sized piece of octal explosive, you get that detonating in this area here in that gap, pushing that molten copper in there and exploding. You can create a lot of overpressure. This is a weak spot on all those T-series. Right here. With an RPG, you can also hit them in the tracks and slow them down. Remember, your goal, you need to get it slow or stationary so you can hit it with one of these. These are not good weapons for moving targets. It's a rocket. It's not a missile. As they're going down your streets, people could come in from the sides, throw debris in here and slow these suckers down. When you get them slowed down, this is what you do. Let me see, where's my other one? Oh yeah, this is the front of the tank. Let's say this is a T-80 tank or T-72 series. They're going to have reactive armor stacked up all in here. This glacis plate is a huge piece of steel. Big, huge wedge of steel. It weighs tons right here. Never going to get through that. The front's pretty much out of the question. You can disable with an RPG strike to either one of these tracks. These are so vulnerable. Anybody that's worked on armor knows you spend a lot of time with tracks. This one here hit a landmine. Knocked it right out. Couldn't move after that. Had to fix it. Coming in from the sides with an RPG, not a good, that's probably the worst angle you can try to hit them because they got reactive armor up here. They've got grid on those Russian tanks, very advanced. But you got to come in through this back. This area right here, I've seen a lot of RPG strikes. If you can hit right here between the turret and the hull is a confined space right here. If you can get that jet of molten copper pushed in there and exploding in that gap, you create a phenomenal amount of overpressure in these T-series tanks, and you can kill and disable anybody inside neurologically from the shock waves and the overpressure. But you may be able to get through these louvers too with a tandem charge. So the weakest part of a tank's always the rear. This is the turret's traversed around here, but this is the rear. And very similar looking to what a T-series tank would be. Try to get that gap or punch through these louvers and stop that tank. Then you can take, and this goes with any armored vehicle here. Let's take this Bradley. If you hit the front of this Bradley with a good Molotov cocktail, the flames and smoke are going to come up here, and they're going to cover sensors up here and optics and periscopes that they use to see the driver and the commander. Same thing with a tank. You hit this area here, flame and smoke are coming up, and soot, and it can blind them. You want to blind them. You can do it really easily in these tanks. You got to look at a tank as like a coffin if you can get it slowed down and isolated. Got to get it isolated too, because there might be other armored vehicles that can deliver fire on you while you're trying to do this. But your goal is to try to get that top open, because they're going to be buttoned up. You get that top open, you can get a grenade in there. You can take them out with small arms fire as they're coming out. You got to get that soft, gooey stuff on the inside is the goal, and you got to get that top open if this is all you have as a RPG. But you can pummel a stationary tank with RPG hits. You can just pummel them with it. And inside, they're going to be really in bad shape, and they're going to want to get out, especially if you blinded them. You can use RPG strikes on the front here to blind them too. The goal is to get that top open and get them out. Get a grenade in there, and you go throwing grenades around in these things, it could be suicide for you too. You got to remember that, because they've got a lot of ammunition in here. You throw a grenade in there, you better be well out of the way before that kicks off. Could be real ugly. But you got to get those tanks slowed down. They're not that easy to slow down. But you can do it just by throwing debris in these things. When they're traveling down your streets, you can slow them down. You can hit them with these. They probably have millions of RPGs in Ukraine. One of the most popular weapons. And even the single-stage RPG, this is the weak spot. This is the rear of the T-series. Get that in that gap there. You'll mess them up on the inside. Those overpressure and shock waves. You can also cause a lot of interior spalling if you hit that sweet spot right here. I've been inside of tanks that have been hit with RPGs, old RPGs, and it causes a lot of spalling. You'll get nuts and bolts, rivets popped off. You can see where they just sheared off from the shock waves. The shock waves go out and then they come back and they intersect and they release a lot of energy, throw a lot of spall around on the inside. So you take your RPG on the rear. If you got a dual stage RPG, I think you can get through a lot of these louvers and knock the tank out. But you may already have the tank stopped and you're trying to actually defeat the tank, which means destroying the people inside. It's just how it works. You gotta kill the enemy, and that's a real vulnerable spot on those. Little tip. But don't think these tanks are all big and rugged. These mechanisms, man, they are very, very quirky. You'd be surprised. You throw a big log in there, like some hardwood, like oak, you can cause them to slow down. You got to slow them down. You got to slow them down. You got to get that top up.